How's it guys, this is Dayvy FPL and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video for the penultimate Game Week 37, what I've done, because there's been such a short turnaround from blank Game Week 36 to Game Week 37, I've kind of combined to make one mega video, one ultimate video. No, not an ultimate guide video, but what I've done is I've combined the preview and the team selection into one video just for Game Week 37. We're going to start off with some more talking points relating to the team selection as we take a look at my blank Game Week 36 team and how they got along. We're then going to shift our attention to some talking points, including which Man City assets should you guys be looking at, if any, as well as Jota replacements, before taking a little bit of a deeper dive into those Jota replacements and talking about Harrison versus Raphinha. We're then going to move on to captaincy before finally talking about my own transfer plan and my own team selection going into that Tuesday night deadline for Game Week 37. So there, a little bit of a reminder there about the Tuesday night deadline. If you guys are forgetful or you tend to not know when the deadlines are, simply just follow me on Twitter at DaveFPL and put notifications on there, or just simply hit the bell notifications down below so that you guys are notified when I do go live, where we will be doing a Deadline with Dayvy live stream, as I said, and going through my final transfer plan for the upcoming game week. But that being said, let's get straight into this video. So going over a quick review of blank Game Week 36, and the quicker we go over this, the better, because it was not a great game week. As you can see on screen there, 40 points, but the thing about this is that we did make 3 transfers with only 2 free transfers. So yes, a -4 hit there, so we actually only got 36 points, and for a blank Game Week 36, although it wasn't the best game week in the world, that was enough for a red arrow to about that 54k mark. So quite a significant red arrow for blank Game Week 36 there, about 14k places, which is not great at this stage of the season. That should be a 14k green arrow, and I have to admit that I don't think that top 10k is going to be anywhere at reach for this upcoming 2 game weeks. I don't think we're going to be finishing in the top 10k, unfortunately, and now is kind of mission to finish as high as possible as we can to kind of save our face for this FPL season. But starting off in goal, nothing much to talk about there. As predicted, Forster did not start. I just didn't want to take a -4 transfer for a goalkeeper when Forster could have potentially played. It was kind of a high risk because obviously McCarthy either had to get injured or maybe the Southampton manager had to come out with a different change of heart of rotating his keepers and maybe just go with Forster. But both of my keepers, Mendy and Forster, didn't end up playing, so we only got 0 points. It would have been interesting to see if I did take a -4 hit and who I would have gone for. One of my minds was maybe going for someone like a Pickford or going for someone like a Fabianski, but both of those lost their clean sheet. I think the only goalkeeper that I had in my mind that I could have gone for was Meslier, as he did keep a clean sheet and I think he got a save point and a bonus point to boot. So Forster didn't end up playing, and neither did Mendy, and the rest of my defense basically didn't play as well. We got Cody and Lowton with 0 and 1 points. Cody maybe was a little bit expected because he was playing against Spurs, and I had Son, I had Kane. I was hoping that those 2 assets did well from an attacking point of view, and then that obviously would have counteracted my defense from Wolves. So Cody, not too worried about that one, but then Lowton goes and concedes 4 goals to a lead side, which might be expected, but I definitely wasn't thinking that Burnley would lose by 4 goals to 0, and obviously then Lowton gets those minus points for goals conceded and ended up on 0 points, so he basically didn't play as well. Phillips, Lucas Digne, 2 points there. Phillips, I always thought that West Brom would score. If you kind of watched my free hit video, I said that I wouldn't go for a Liverpool asset in defense because I did think they'd score, but then I mean Lucas Digne was probably one of the most disappointing players of the game week, including Calvert-Lewin up front. Everton losing 1-0 to Sheffield United definitely wasn't what I predicted, and that's why when I brought in these 2 assets, part of my 2 free transfers, I was expecting a couple more points than 4 points from the 2 of them. So Lucas Digne, Calvert-Lewin, don't really know what to say about them. Calvert-Lewin had a little bit more of a chance of getting some returns. He did have a shot straight at the keeper from quite close range. If you guys did watch the game, you probably would have thought, how on earth didn't he score from that chance? But obviously that's just something we have to take into account. And I mean, the thing about Calvert-Lewin is this isn't the first time that he's disappointed me this season, so I am a little bit used to getting let down by the Everton striker. The midfield, we got Lingard here with only 2 points. West Ham had a little bit of a tough game there against Brighton. I thought it would end 0-0, 1-1, and that's kind of exactly what happened here. So quite a close game between these 2 sides, and what was interesting to see is that although Brighton didn't have their best defender starting, they still played quite a good defense, and overall defensively were quite sound. So I don't know how much that says about Brighton's defense versus West Ham's attack, but at the end of the day, Lingard only got 2 points, and that's what we have to take. Then we also have Jota, who got injured. Apparently it was after the United game, so I don't really know why Klopp didn't come out and say that Jota was out injured. Maybe they were assessing the injury. If you do remember that they'd had only played United the night before when he had his press conference, so not a lot of news came from that game or that press conference for us. So it was a little bit annoying that Jota didn't feature, but in that game against West Bromwich Albion, there weren't that many goals that Liverpool scored. Obviously, the only goal scored from an outfielder was going to be Mo Salah there, so he got 10 points. It was really nice to see Mo Salah actually getting some bonus points, because usually when he scores and only gets one return, he usually doesn't get bonus points just because he misses quite a lot of chances. He's quite wasteful, and that negatively affects his bonus points. So at least this time we managed to get 3, and then the final player is going to be Heung-min Son along with Harry Kane, and Heung-min Son was actually the -4 hit that we did do. So this hit kind of paid off. I think it paid off by about 1 point, and I mean at this stage of the season every point counts, but I was expecting Heung-min Son to do a little bit better than just 3 points, but unfortunately that was only the case. And then Harry Kane did end up scoring a goal, and that's why he has 6 points, and he did end up not getting any bonus points though. It was Holbier who ended up getting quite a few, and the other players from that Spurs defense. On the bench, nothing much to talk about there. Mendy, Greenwood, Holding, and Iheanacho all obviously didn't have fixtures, and those were my blank game week players. But at the end of the day, it was a red arrow on a blank game week that we had somewhat prepared for, which is always going to be disappointing. But I kind of think it breaks down to those Everton assets. I mean, they simply, in a fixture that I thought they would do really well, didn't perform, and that just kind of sums up our FPL season, I think, at the moment. But now let's get on and talk about some more specific talking points to the upcoming game week 37. So the first talking point we're going to be going over is Man City and what you guys should be doing around this team. Should you be bringing these players in? Should you be keeping them? What is the news coming out of that Man City camp? So first of all, in their fixture against Newcastle, I could not have predicted a different lineup if I tried. That lineup really took me by surprise, and the simple thinking behind it was I thought they would go full strength in that game against Newcastle in blank game week 36, and then in game week 37 they'd rotate, then in game week 38 they'd play a similar strong lineup in preparation for that Champions League final. So I don't really know what Pep Guardiola is going to do right now, if he plays a rotated side again, or he plays a strong side and then maybe rotates a couple of players against Everton in game week 38, so he does have some fresh players for that Champions League final. I just don't really know at the moment what's going to happen, and that's why I can't really recommend Man City assets and for you guys to potentially pick them up. Now I do think that the majority of the stronger players, such as Mahrez, such as Foden, will start against Brighton this midweek, but I don't really know if I'd suggest going for them unless you guys really want to go for some differentials. In terms of the defense, I don't really suggest any of their options, as that defense has been rotated quite a lot, but I would maybe think that a defender isn't the right move to go for even at this stage of the season, because defensives usually have quite a low ceiling, so the potential for punts, potential for differential points, it might not be the best thing to look at. I think this was really a missed opportunity for us in that Newcastle game. If Pep Guardiola made a full strength side, I think that game could have been quite open, quite a lot of goals, but luckily we did get some news, and we covered that in the deadline stream, that Guardiola was going to rotate quite heavily. So would I bring in Man City players at the moment? Only if I really wanted to go differential, really wanted to take a punt. Otherwise, I'd probably focus on sides that I was a little bit more comfortable with players starting in that starting 11, and hoping that just because they start maybe means that there's more of a chance of some secured returns. In terms of holding, I would just simply keep Mahrez if you have him for this lineup. If you brought him in for blank game week 36, just keep him, because I think there's a good chance that he'll start. Maybe just don't consider captaining him, but this week I think there's enough captaincy options for you not to go for a Man City asset, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on. But now let's go on and move to the next talking point. So what I wanted to talk about for this upcoming talking point is going to be the fixtures for game week 37 and game week 38. And the thinking behind this is that a lot of people were asking me what differentials should they be looking at, what teams should they be targeting. So instead of going for specific differentials, I wanted to highlight some teams that I think will be quite differential for you guys to take punts on for game week 37 and game week 38. The first thing I want to mention is just because a team is owned by a lot of managers doesn't mean that every player is not going to be differential. And the one I want to highlight here is going to be Sadio Mane from a Liverpool side. Now everyone owns Trent Alexander-Arnold, a Mo Salah, a Diego Jota before he was injured, So you might be ignoring other options from that Liverpool side, and that's where kind of Sadio Mane fits in here perfectly, because not only is he still guaranteed to start now that Jota's out, he still had some great fixtures there. And you can see Liverpool's assets are rated 3rd on Fantasy Football Hub's fixture ticker from an attacking point of view. I went for attack over defense because I think the upside for an attacker is a lot more than a defender, and they have some great fixtures. Burnley, Crystal Palace, Sadio Mane could be an option that you guys look at. The only thing about Mane is that he's quite expensive, and that's the thing that you guys have to kind of incorporate into your lineups, is that the risk is a lot higher if Sadio Mane doesn't return. Sadio Mane is taking up a lot more budget in your team, and just because he is 12 million versus maybe a 6 million midfielder or forward, so if he doesn't return, the risk of you getting maybe a red arrow, maybe not getting as much of a high rank as you want, is going to be significantly higher. And that's why I think a lot of people maybe favor those cheaper enablers, cheaper differentials, because there's kind of a low risk on them if they don't end up returning. But I think that Sadio Mane is a good example for one of those maybe more expensive differentials that you guys can look at. Then obviously those Man City assets as well. Not a lot of people own those Man City assets. If a Kevin De Bruyne is a back fit for this game week, should be quite a nice asset to have, but I just would be quite cautious about that old Man City lineup and what that entails. One that you could also maybe look at is a Gareth Bale from Spurs. Aston Villa, Leicester, not the best fixtures in the world, but I think that he can score against anyone, and he could also be at a little bit of a nice punt. But now let's go on and talk about the main teams that I think you guys should be focusing on if you want to go for some more differentials. The first one is going to be Leeds. I think that Leeds attackers offer some nice variation there from maybe a Bamford and a Raphinha. We saw Rodrigo getting 2 goals last game week in blank game week 36. Maybe he is a nice option to go for. A little bit of a variation there from a Bamford, and if he carries on this form, I can see him potentially even starting for that Leeds side. So that's one on my radar, but then there's obviously also Harrison. I don't want to touch on him too much because we're going over an in-depth analysis of him versus Raphinha, but there are other options that you guys can look at always from a Leeds side. We then have West Ham with someone like an Antonio. Antonio is more of the spectrum of maybe a little bit more higher owned than the differentials of the 5%ers, the 2%ers, but I still think that West Ham side could provide some good value. We have Ben Rama also from that wing position that could also provide some good value. And when you look at those fixtures, West Bromwich Albion and Southampton, I mean, great fixtures on the horizon for West Ham, a side that has played really well this season, and with their main starters like a Declan Rice coming back from injury, I think there's going to be a good motivation there for them to potentially get some good results. The next team I want to talk about is going to be Newcastle, because Newcastle have Sheffield United and also Fulham. Going to talk about their assets in a little bit when we talk about those Jota replacements, but they're one of those teams that you guys can look at. A Joelinton from that forward position. Other forwards have provided quite a lot of options in the upcoming game weeks with Leeds. We got Aston Villa, we got Burnley as well with Chris Wood. So I mean, add Joelinton into the mix there if you want to go for more of a differential striker. But then there's also fixtures that you guys can target. I mean, Arsenal upcoming face a Crystal Palace side that haven't looked that great. I mean, they got a win this weekend, which was a little bit of a surprise, but defensively they didn't have the best of form. So I think a player like a Lacazette and a Aubameyang could also be someone that you guys look at. And also there's been some assets from a youngster point of view that have also been playing in that Arsenal side if you guys want to go for maybe a cheaper option. So there are options here that you guys should go for. If I have to kind of highlight the sides that I think are a little bit more differential, I would go for a West Ham, a Newcastle. You could even maybe look at a West Brom. I mean, West Brom have been scoring the occasional goal here. A player like a Matias Pereira is on great form. So against the West Ham side and a Leeds side, that could also be quite a nice potential to get some points. But maybe just select the team that you think are going to do well on this kind of fixture rating, because I have rated them from best to worst here. Best on the left-hand side, worst on the right-hand side. And maybe just pick one or two options that you think you guys can spend those free transfers on. I wouldn't be spending too many hits at this stage of the season, especially on differentials, because they're lowly owned doesn't always mean that they're going to score. That's the thing that you just must keep in mind. And just because you own a highly owned player, you could own a combination from the same squad that is actually quite differential. So always keep that in mind. It's not only the players you look at, it's also your decisions in your FPL squad that could turn out to be differential. Now moving on to probably the main talking point of this video, and the reason you guys are watching it, is what to do with Diogo Jota and who should you replace him for. So Diogo Jota, after that United game, Klopp said that he did something to his bone in his foot and he will be out for the rest of the season. It's not going to be too much of a long-term injury, but because the season ends in a week, a short-term injury is probably still going to keep you out for the rest of the season. So the three options I've gone for here, when I have gone for the specific team, I actually have gone for more of a differential option, but we will be talking about their more highly owned teammates and other options that you guys could look at. So the three teams here are Newcastle, Leeds and Manchester United. Starting off with United because they're probably the most highly owned squad. I've got Greenwood here as maybe a little bit of an option if you guys can upgrade. So I think Greenwood comes in about 0.5 more expensive than Diogo Jota, but he is playing on quite good form at the moment, and he faces Fulham and Wolves up next. Now the only thing about Greenwood is that he's not guaranteed to start, and we have had news of a potential of a Daniel James, of an Anthony Martial coming back from their injuries, so there could be some rotation there, but I think that Greenwood is still a safe option to go for at that price bracket. So not a lot of risk at about that 7 million price bracket, but the thing about Greenwood is that because he's not guaranteed to start, I kind of would maybe tread away from him. I just wanted to talk about Greenwood because a lot of people have been mentioning him as a potential Diogo Jota replacement, but if you guys do have a free transfer to use and you want to improve your squad, although Greenwood might have a high ceiling, I just think that you have to go with some guaranteed minutes at this stage of the season, and I think that Greenwood doesn't offer that. Now the two players that do offer that are going to be Willock from Newcastle and then also Harrison from Leeds, and these two sides have great fixtures. Starting off with Newcastle, we're going to be talking about Willock, but obviously other options include going for maybe someone like a Gucci as Saint Maximum. He also has provided some good outlets for that attack from Newcastle. Although he hasn't really got the most attacking returns, he has opened the space quite a lot, and I mean it's bound for him to get an attacking return in the upcoming game weeks. The only thing about Newcastle's fixtures against Sheffield United and against Fulham is I don't see these games being massively attacking for Newcastle. I think that they are going to be quite comfortable for a Newcastle side that has actually been playing quite well recently, but I don't think they're going to be the 4-0s, the 5-0s that maybe some people predict. But I think that Willock and a player like a Saint Maximum could still get returns. Now with Willock, I think a lot of people think that he's going to be on penalties, and I just want to say that he's definitely not going to be on penalties if Joelinton is on the field. The only reason why he has been taking the occasional penalty is because in the South American culture, you don't take the second penalty of a game if you scored the first one. So maybe you guys hope that Newcastle get 2 penalties and Joelinton scores the first one, then definitely Willock could be in contention for that second one. But I wouldn't be basing my opinion on Willock just because he is on penalties. But I still think that his attacking returns have been quite good this season, so you guys definitely should have him on your horizon. I think I might just favor going for someone like a Saint Maximum because of that more direct attacking return that I think will come from him playing at that striker position or in that wing position. But I think if you want to go for Willock, definitely a comfortable low risk option to go for at that 5.5 bracket, and against Sheffield United and Fulham, he's bound to get a return surely. Then moving on to the Leeds assets, and the reason why I went for Harrison is because he's a little bit more differential than maybe going for Raphinha or one of their other attackers. But with those Leeds fixtures being against Southampton and then a final game in front of their fans against West Bromwich Albion, I can see them getting some returns in this one definitely. And I mean, after beating Burnley 4-0, a side that's usually quite defensively strong, I am favouring Leeds to get a couple of goals here, and that's why I've gone for Harrison because he is a little bit more differential than Raphinha. Only going to kind of talk about the fixtures right now because in the next talking point we cover Raphinha versus Harrison completely, but I think out of these three options, I definitely think a Leeds option should be where you're looking at. Even if you do own a Bamford or Raphinha already, I think that you guys could double up, triple up on Leeds anyway, because I just think they're such a safe side. And I think against West Brom, I think that's definitely more of the tougher fixture out of Southampton, West Brom, and West Brom are going to be faced in front of a Leeds side at home. And I just think it's going to give the Leeds side such a boost, considering that they came up from the Championship. They're going to be in the Premier League next season. I reckon those Leeds fans are going to go absolutely mental. I think that's going to set up Leeds perfectly for a comfortable win against West Bromwich Albion. So that's my favorite option to go for. There obviously are some other options that you guys can also look at. I wouldn't be looking at a Ferran Torres right now because the thing about him is that he's just played for Man City. So I don't know if he's going to play 2 games in that short period, and I think they will go for a more comfortable lineup similar to the Champions League lineup that Man City had versus Paris Saint-Germain, but then they also could have some other options in that Man City lineup. I think a Phil Foden could be an option that you guys do look at, but just remember that those players could be rotated, and if you need a player that's going to be in your starting 11 for the next 2 game weeks, I think that a Leeds option should be where you guys are looking at. So now, because I've recommended going for Harrison or Raphinha or whatever Leeds option you want to go for, which Leeds asset should you guys be looking at? So what I did was I went over to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk and I went onto the player comparison tool and I compared Harrison in the blue there and I compared Raphinha in the red. In terms of the game weeks, I went from about game week 26 or 28 to currently, because you can recall that Raphinha has been basically out with an injury for I think about the 4 past game weeks. I think he came back and had a substitute appearance, but then he played the full game last game week in blank game week 36. So I think his match fitness is perfectly fine and I wouldn't be considering him to be unfit or not starting definitely. But in terms of the comparison here, you can see that Harrison has actually been performing better than Raphinha, except for shots in the box. But I mean, that stat is so close for both of these players. I mean, if you have to look at the stats, I mean, Harrison does look quite good here. And the thing about Harrison is that he is more differential. So if you guys are looking for a differential between these two options, I think that Harrison is kind of a no-brainer to go for just because of that ownership. But I mean, Raphinha is still a great option to go for. And the thing about Raphinha that I always kind of think about is that if you have to compare these two options, who's the better playmaker? And in my opinion, it's going to be the Brazilian Raphinha, because I just think in terms of those skills, in terms of that open play, he just provides better options. The thing about Harrison though is in blank game week 36 he was on set pieces, and that could be quite a valuable asset to go for, and maybe that's why it's kind of boosted up his expected assist rate at this stage of the season. So I mean, these two options, not much between them, but I think if you include that kind of ownership and what you're going to be getting out of these two options, Harrison definitely looks like an appealing option. But I still think that Raphinha is the better option to go for, and when I'm thinking about my own side, I think I would be more comfortable going with Raphinha just because I think he's a little bit more consistent, is going to get you some more points potentially in these last 2 game weeks. Now moving on to the final talking point before we talk about my own transfer plan and my own team selection going into game week 37, I'm going to be covering captaincy. And captaincy this week is actually making me really excited for this upcoming game week 37. And the reason for that is that when all 3 giants of the game have a great fixture, it usually increases the variance and it decreases the selection of captaincy ownership. So what I mean by that is that all 3 of these players are highly owned. So what I'm kind of hoping is that there's a direct split, a 33% for each of these 3, and that's going to increase the chance of you getting a big green arrow if your selected captain manages to bang. So we've got 3 options here, all highly owned: Bruno Fernandes, Harry Kane, Mo Salah. I think it will be quite similar to last game week when we saw Mo Salah being the most highly captained player, but I think it will be a lot closer because the fixtures look a lot better for Spurs and also for Manchester United. And you must remember that United didn't even feature last game week, and if I had to kind of predict the order of these captaincy ownerships, it's going to be number 1 Mo Salah, number 2 Bruno Fernandes, and then finally Harry Kane. So Harry Kane is probably the differential one to go for if you guys want to go a little bit differential. But if you want to go safe, there's no safer option to go for than going for Mo Salah against Burnley. The only thing about Burnley is, although in game week 36 they got absolutely trounced by a Leeds side 4-0, I do think against the bigger opposition, inverted commas, not saying that Leeds aren't a big squad, but against the Liverpool side, it's kind of historically that they love to give Liverpool a hard time, and I think that's exactly what they're going to try and do against Liverpool. The thing about this game though is that if Liverpool score early on, I think this could be quite a high scoring affair for Liverpool, and with just how much is on the line for a Liverpool side that needs to kind of get top 4, I can see this potentially being quite a high scoring affair, and that's why I think Mo Salah is going to be a safe option to go for, and I do think it might be one of the best options to go for, and in my opinion, probably the best option to go for. But then we have a Harry Kane against an Aston Villa side that also didn't play that well defensively on the weekend, and if they do have those defensive vulnerabilities that we saw on the weekend, I do think that Spurs could get a couple of goals, and including Harry Kane. And that's kind of the debate we have here, as we have Mo Salah on one hand, we have Harry Kane on the other, both of these two fighting out for the golden boot. In a perfect world, they're probably going to share it at the end of the day, but I think both of these two want to be the standout golden boot winner. And I mean, against an Aston Villa side, I'm pretty sure that Spurs should be getting a couple goals in here, so it's really hard to kind of predict between these two, and I am biased between Harry Kane and Mo Salah because obviously I don't own Bruno Fernandes at all. I mean, Bruno also has a great fixture against Fulham. The only thing I will say about this fixture against Fulham is that Fulham usually don't concede too many goals, but at the end of the day, if it finishes 2-0, Bruno Fernandes gets both goals or 1 goal, 1 assist, he could really outperform Harry Kane or Mo Salah with that, and that's just the thing that you guys have to think about. So 3 great options to go for. I don't really know what to go for if I had to own all 3 of these options, but I think currently I think that Mo Salah is definitely probably the best option, but then I think that Harry Kane, if you want to go differential, you want to make up in those mini leagues, those overall ranks, I think that he should be an option that you guys do look at because I am expecting a couple of goals for Spurs against Aston Villa. If we have to go over to the Fantasy Football Hub predictor tool here and look over their prediction for who's going to be the most highest scoring player in a game week 37, they've got Mo Salah up top there with 7.8. Then the next player is going to be Harry Kane and Bruno Fernandes. I just want to kind of include Sadio Mane here because we were talking about him as going for a potential differential, and if you want to go mega differential, you can even consider captaining Sadio Mane, because if memory serves me right, I think that Sadio Mane's record against Burnley is actually quite good, so that's someone that you guys can look at for more of a differential. But I think this is kind of the prediction that I would go for. I think that Mo Salah is the best option to go for, Harry Kane's the second best, and then Bruno Fernandes is third base. But if you guys, as I said, have to be differential, I think that Harry Kane is going to be the lowest owned out of these three giants in FPL at the moment. So now moving on to my transfer plan before game week 37, and what I'm kind of thinking of doing is I'm only going to be using one free transfer this week, and that's to either take Diogo Jota out or to bench Diogo Jota, but then I'll have to take out Iheanacho just to get another starting player that has a great fixture. And I'm kind of looking at Antonio right now because I think I'll double up on that West Ham attack with those lovely fixtures coming up for West Ham. I think that Antonio should do quite well from now to the end of the season, especially because West Ham have those players coming back from injury that I think should make quite a big impact. But I think I'm currently leaning towards taking Diogo Jota out straight because I don't really need him in my squad. I'm not going to play him next game week because he's not going to recover from that injury. So right now, Raphinha is the potential option that I am looking at, and that also saves me a bit of budget there to maybe make a move like a Heung-min Son to a Sadio Mane in the last game week of the season, just to take a little bit of a punt for that last fixture. But Iheanacho out is quite an appealing option because obviously Leicester have really tough fixtures, and after that FA Cup win, I think that Chelsea are going to be out for revenge in this game week 37 fixture, and I can't see Leicester doing much in these last two game weeks of the season. So I think right now I currently am leaning towards Diogo Jota out, and then I could always look at going for someone like a Harrison just to be a little bit more differential. But as I said, currently favor Raphinha just because I think that he's the better playmaker. But now let's get on and look at my team selection. So right now, I've not made any transfers just because of the quick turnaround from blank game week 36 to game week 37. I'm just worried that there could potentially be some news coming up tomorrow about some more injuries, and I think I want to just wait for that. So in the deadline stream tomorrow, I probably will make my transfer and then I will finalize my team selection. But as I mentioned, for the differential aspect, I'm going to go Harry Kane captain right now. I can easily see that changing to Mo Salah though, so don't take this as gospel right now, but the overall team is going to be the set team for the rest of the deadline. So starting off on goal, I've gone for Mendy over Forster just because I'm looking to maybe bring in a Leicester option this week, and I think that Chelsea side will get back to that clean sheet ways against Leicester. And I'm not really worried about any rotation right now because Kepa has had his cup fixture. He won't be starting. Mendy will be back between the sticks because obviously they are having that Champions League final coming up, and you don't really want your playing keeper to get out of form. So Mendy in here, and I am quite confident of him maybe getting some defensive returns. The rest of the defense is quite budget and then expensive. We got Phillips and Holding here. Holding plays Crystal Palace, who actually attack quite well in blank game week 36. So I'm a little bit worried about that, but I do think that Arsenal have the potential to maybe get a clean sheet in that one. And then Phillips is obviously playing Burnley. Now Burnley are a weird one because you usually think of them as a more defensive side, but this season they've been more of an attacking side, and with Liverpool's defensive form right now, I can honestly see someone like a Chris Wood scoring, and that would obviously wipe out Phillips' clean sheet. And I'll say it again, Phillips on those corners and those set plays is absolutely atrocious. It's almost like he's defending attacking set pieces. It's actually ridiculous, and for someone that's so good at headers, I honestly thought that he would score a little bit more off those set pieces. Then finally, we have Lucas Digne here against Wolves, and I am hoping that Everton can finally repay me after bringing these two assets in last game week. And with the fixture against Wolves, I am confident that Everton could get something. I think this game will be quite close, similar to the Spurs-Wolves game, but I think at least hopefully some returns could come out of that with Lucas Digne and then Calvert-Lewin. And then the midfield looks absolutely stacked here. We've got Greenwood against Fulham, kind of just hoping that he starts this one because that hopefully will equal some points. Then we've got Lingard against West Brom that I think should do quite well, and I think that West Brom side might be a little bit leggy, a little bit tired after that Liverpool fixture. Then you also have Heung-min Son and Harry Kane against Aston Villa, and we've spoken about those defensive vulnerabilities that Aston Villa had on the weekend, and I think that Heung-min Son and Harry Kane could have a couple of goals and have a little bit of fun in this fixture. Diogo Jota here will obviously be replaced by either Raphinha or Harrison, and that looks like the transfer that I'm going to be making. And then finally, we've got Mo Salah against Burnley, and now Mo Salah against Burnley, going to have to look at that record, see how he actually performs, but I think I am a little bit confident of him hopefully getting some returns. And I mean, as I said, Liverpool just have so much on the line at the moment that I do hope that they get some attacking returns and maybe even a cheeky clean sheet for Phillips in that defense. On the bench, we've got Forster. I mentioned him against Leeds, and I'm not really comfortable playing a Southampton defender against Leeds, but if you have to play Forster, don't worry. I'm pretty sure that he'll be back in that lineup, and then what will happen is McCarthy will play in game week 38. Cody against Everton, I own Calvert-Lewin, so obviously don't want to play a Wolves defender, and Wolves defense right now doesn't look too great, so that's why I'm kind of hoping that Calvert-Lewin gets some returns. And then Lowton against Liverpool, obviously not going to play Lowton because I own Salah. And then finally Iheanacho against Chelsea. So I'm kind of banking on Mendy getting a clean sheet and Iheanacho getting nothing, because that will lead to more points in my opinion, and it'll be more of a differential, because not many people own that Chelsea defense right now because they haven't been that successful, but a lot of people own Iheanacho because he's just been on such good form. But this is the team selection, but I'll finalize the team tomorrow for you guys in the deadline with Dayvy live stream. So this is basically a wrap up the video, guys. Apologies that it has been a longer one, but hopefully it's been quite a resourceful, quite an informative video, and you guys are going to be approaching these last 2 game weeks with absolute fire and venom, and hopefully we're going to boost up these ranks as we should. I'm going to be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.